Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter here, and today we're going to paint these two bad guys over here, the Gundabad Trolls. One with the scythes and one with this crushing club. They have been on my shelf gathering dust for a couple of years now, and I thought it was time to paint them. So let's see how to get those results. First, I primed the models in full black, and I covered the base with some graveling sand, some basing sand. You can choose whatever you want, some rocks if you want, or whatever. I gave them a full black spray, so no zenithal highlighting this time. Just this, and they look amazing. They're huge. You can see the sand here. So yeah, let's go paint these ones up. I've been dreading to start these for I think at least 2 years now. So the benefit of making a YouTube video is that you have to paint them eventually, right? So the first thing I did was mix some Incubi Darkness with Abaddon Black to cover the majority, actually all of the skin, even the parts that we're going to brighten up later on. So for now, just hit the model with this mix. It's a very dark blue greenish color, and well, it looks quite nice. I decided to go for the blue, the original box cover art blue skin version. So next thing I did is took some pure Incubi Darkness and covered it just with a brush, no dry brushing yet. What I tried to do here is just cover the main areas, so leave the recesses as they are, and yeah, just go for this Incubi Darkness on the rest of the skin. But pick your side, so the deeper parts just leave them as they are. We go for a brighter variant of this skin tone, but you get some shading like this as well. So again, the deeper parts, just leave them as they are. And the raised, largest portion of the skin, hit with the lighter Incubi Darkness. Now, next layer is going to be Dark Reaper, and for that I'm using a fairly large dry brush. I'm just using a makeup brush. I think it's about €1, maybe €2 at your local store. You can use any brush you want. It has soft bristles, which is ideal, and it doesn't have to cost that much. So what I did here is touched all the raised areas and smoothen out those two previous colors. And next I'm highlighting this with Fenrisian Grey combined to the Dark Reaper, and further on pure Fenrisian Grey as a final highlight. So from here on, again with your dry brush, but I'm using a smaller one, some Fenrisian Grey, to create some extra details. And this time we're gonna focus on the face, the knuckles, just the parts that really stand out in this model. What you want to do when painting big models is create a focus point, and for me, with this guy, it was the face. The other one, the other Gundabad Troll, he has a helmet, so it's a different story there. But here I wanted to focus on the face. Now, I did some shading in between with Drakenhof Nightshade, also only with the face. And I created some nice fine lining. We're going to dry brush that later on. Make sure it's not too thick. Touch a part on the cheeks, the ears, the forehead, so you get those wrinkles. Now next I'm going to focus on the lighter part of the skin with some Karak stone. I also used a dry brush for doing this, and make sure that when using it you make some circular movements to get an even coverage. You don't want it to be too strong. So if you notice that you're too strong, go lighter on this. Wipe off some paint, try again. Now it doesn't really matter where this skin stops and turns over to the blue part, just make it up as you go. I think it more or less represents the softer parts of the skin, right? Like the chest, the inner arms, maybe the backside of the legs or a bit of the sides. You can choose whatever you want. So I'm painting two models at the same time here, so now and again you will see me switch from one model to the other, but the basics, the principle is the same. Now we're going to highlight this with Screaming Skull. Screaming Skull is a bit more brighter, as you can see here. Make sure to make a nice spread so you don't get a hard cut from one color to the other. Take your dry brush, take your time, and rub it in. You get those nice soft tones. Now I re-highlighted some edge highlights with Fenrisian Gray. Focused on the face again. Touched the rims of the eyebrows, the eye sockets, the nose. And as you can see here, I touched part of the chin and the lips of this model with the previous Karak stone as well. Just to create a nice transition between the soft skin, which is also in the neck, and the darker skin. For the inside of the mouth, it's only with this model, the other one's wearing a helmet. I used Baragner Burgundy to paint the tongue as well as the gums of the teeth. Now it's a bit hard to reach, but just use a brush with a fairly long point or tip and you'll manage. Now the next thing I did was use Screamer Pink to create some highlights on those gums, the tongue. Next I went for the eyes with Palette Witch Flesh. They are rather large eyes compared to a 30mm model, like the most Lord of the Rings models are. So this shouldn't be too big of a problem. Use some Abaddon Black to create a pupil. And again, the other one is easy. He's wearing a helmet. Now I washed all of the fleshy parts, the tongue, the gums, with Carboro Crimson. While I let that dry, I also washed the body, the light body parts, with some Seraphim Sepia. This way you get those nice cracks and fine details back again, because when dry brushing you tend to rub those in as well. Now you let that dry and we can continue on the mouth. I'm using Karak stone to create these nice dirty teeth. We're going to brighten them up later on, but for now it's Karak stone. Be very careful not to touch the gums because they're nice and pinky, and only focus on those teeth. And for highlighting these I used Palette Witch Flesh, just on the front, the tips, to make them look a bit more sharp. Now we're going to continue on the largest part of these models, which is the armor. And I'm using a Leadbelcher Abaddon Black mixture to create a nice matte looking silvery metal look. That's a nice description, isn't it? Well, at least it's going to be darker than Leadbelcher itself is. So this way you get a nice dirty, grimy looking armor, even in the base coat. And we're going to darken it up later on. So in the end you get something like this. And you see that it's not that shiny, but it's the way it's supposed to be, right? And we're going to darken it even more with some Nuln Oil. Now it's a lot of area to cover, so make sure not to get those blotchy spots because the oils, they tend to creep up in corners, so make sure you get a nice even spread. It's okay if it's a little bit, you can fix it later if you want, but you don't want these big blobs in one corner. But you want enough on it to have an effect. So next, when the Nuln Oil has dried, I'm using Agrax Earth Shade to create a second layer of dirt looking on this armor. Don't cover everything. I mean, you want the sharp edges to be silvery looking, but get some nice details on there. Don't be too picky, just pick some spots. And when finished, you see something like this. You see some nice results already with the black from the Nuln Oil and the brownish look from the Agrax Earth Shade. And now it's time for some extra details with some Reference Sepia to create an extra tone in these rusty looks. I just touched the armor, all the metal parts here and there, just randomly, to create an extra color detail with these shades. And you get some nice results. When you see here is that I randomly picked out some extra browns with this Reference Sepia, you get a nice result. Now with a dry brush, I'm going to create some sharp edges on the side of the scythes, and also the sharp tips on these models. So the arms, the armor. With those big blades, you want them to look sharp and mean, so make sure to create that nice silvery look of sharpness on the edges. Now afterwards, I'm using some Drakenhof Nightshade to create a metally glow on the parts where normally the light would hit. Now with this Drakenhof Nightshade, I'm creating a shade on the parts where normally the light would hit to create a nice bluish glow on the metal. After we're done here, I'm continuing on the leather parts, Rhinox Hide and Abaddon Black. I'm using on the cloth around his waist. For the straps and belt, I'm using another color later on. So here I'm only focusing on this cloth part. And I'm starting with a rather dark brown to be able to brighten it up later on. That's what I'm doing here with Rhinox Hide. I'm adding a pure Rhinox Hide on the previous mix to create some brighter parts on the raised areas, the large areas actually. Just leave those recesses dark. Now while we let that dry, I'm going to use dried bark on all of the straps. And there are a lot of straps on these models. As you can see here, there are straps under the arms. They are under his arms over here. You can see those previous ones on the back here as well, and you can see the one he's holding with a scythe with, so don't forget that one. Also on the other arm, upper and lower arm, and also under his arm over here. And there are some straps on his legs, 3 on each side. Yeah, and that's it. That's a lot of them, right? So be extra careful not to touch the skin when doing so. When we're done, we're going to cover all of the leathery parts with Agrax Earth Shade, and that is the arm straps as well as the, let's call it the butt flap from now on. So the butt flap needs to be shaded as well, and afterwards we're going to recover the raised parts with Rhinox hide, the previous color. So leave those recesses nice and dark and give this butt flap some extra light. Now we're going to highlight that with Mournfang Brown. So Rhinox hide combined with Mournfang Brown to create a first highlight. When we're done with this, we're going to give it a final extreme highlight with pure Mournfang Brown. And with this, just focus on the very edges. And what I did here is used my brush in a vertical position and create some extra lines. So this way you get this nice edgy look, like it's falling apart. You can create some more lines if you want. Make it more of a cloth looking if you want. Now for the bands on the arms, I'm using Baneblade Brown as an edge highlight, which is more brighter, and it looks like it's worn a lot, like it's damaged. Be very careful because it's as big as the model is, these edges they stay tiny. You just touch the sides, which is very thin. But don't worry, if you touch too much, just use some dried bark to correct your mistake. Here I'm using a Mournfang Brown on the belt. The belt itself was previously painted with some Rhinox hide. I think I used some Doomble Brown. I don't know, I think I forgot to film it. I wanted to have a different color than the rest of the browns, just to get some variation, because it's a lot of the same color on this model. Now for the nails, I'm using Carrick Stone with some Incubi Darkness. And the reason I did this is when you take a good look at nails, it's like a opaque version of your skin, right? So it's like a see-through thingy you have here. So that's the reason I used the Incubi Darkness previously used on the skin and brightened it up with a lighter tone, in this case some Carrick Stone. Now afterwards I darkened it down with Null combined with some Reikland Flesh Shade to get a dirty brown dark look, and you get those creases back, which is very nice. Afterwards use a dry brush, take some Carrick Stone again and retouch those tips, and leave the rims of the nails, leave them nice and dark and dirty. You get a very nice look. Afterwards, we're focusing on the club here with this model, and I'm using Mournfang Brown and a dry brush. Make sure to not cover too much paint, not take too much paint on your brush at once. Better to hit it several times than only once, and make sure not to touch the hands because they're done. So take your time, go around with that Mournfang Brown, use a smaller brush if needed, and leave those nice dark creases in there. Now afterwards I'm using some Steel Legion Drab as a next highlight on the club, and for the wood on the bottom I'm using Ravebone, which is a nice cut wood look. You're looking at the inside of the tree. And I added some extra nooks here, so you can see like some branches have been torn off, and you're looking at this broken wood, light looking. Now to create a nice transition, I'm using Seraphim Sepia to and push it towards the edges to create a nice transition between the previously painted wood and the bright inside. You don't want it to be hard cut, but mix those colors. Do the same in the bottom. If you put on too much, just take it off. Now when dried, I'm focusing on the spikes of the club, and we're just using lead belcher for this one. I want it to be a blunt weapon, so I'm not going to give it extra highlights afterwards. I'm just using the lead belcher here. And take your time. There's a lot of spikes with different sides, so when you're done with that, use null oil to darken them down, and they are wedged in quite deep, so you get some nice deep recesses on the sides. Just leave them there, and I decided not to highlight those afterwards. Now for some nice gory details on the scythe model, I used Blood for the Blood God to splatter on some blood on the sides because they're very clean looking, and I think this is a warrior. He has made some kills, so let's show the results. Just touch it here and there, get some nice spots on there. That can be tricky because you want it to be natural looking, right? Now I decided to go for a wipe to make it go in one direction. Make sure to do both sides because of course he's cutting something in half, so there's blood on both sides of the side. And I wanted to go for some extra detail here and splatter some of this on. For that I used a toothpick, and you can see me here splattering on some of those drips. It's a very, very, very fine detail, but something you're not really able to do so with a brush. So this works very nice. For the base, I used dried bark to brighten it up just a little bit. I wanted to keep it dark, like it's some scorched earth or something like this. I highlighted this a little bit with some Steel Legion drab. You can take it as far as you want. You can use some palette witch flesh if you want to do an extreme highlight. I didn't in the end. And for me, this was my final result on both Gundabad Trolls. I want to thank you so much for watching again, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you like it, and I hope to see you again. Bye bye!